Wonderful. We should be live. This is actually number two. And being human, this being human is a guest house every morning, a new arrival. That's the Rumi poem. Please check out the video on that. I did a couple of them on there because it's a really great way of framing the human existence. And today, I got up bright and early and I dutifully jumped online to do my first live stream. I was very anxious about it because I've never done it. I actually don't like being on camera. I don't like being in front of all this. I don't like asking for your support, but I have a message for you. I have a clarity for people that I think can be beneficial. My name is Dr. Furr. This is Herald Square Psychology. The channel is Bunny Therapy. And I am president and CEO of Herald Square Psychology in New York and in Japan. And I've got a message for you. The first message, like you can see in the Don't Trust Those Therapists, which is, I think, my second most viewed video. I tell you not to trust people that have something to sell. And that includes, politicians, because, it's really interesting how politicians operate. They can be quite selfless, but most of the time, they have skin in the game. They have money that they earn, obviously, by working for the federal government. But after they get out of Congress, they get a lot of money, and they do like speech tours, and lobbyists pay them a lot of money. I also don't trust a lot of the news media because, in the words of Jon Stewart, the news media is often sensationalist and lazy. And, you can see that in the way they cover the election and the way they cover the media. I just finished watching a live news media, and they always start out with, the weather, which I guess is news, but, like all the strange things happening, and like an ambulance getting hit by a train. I guess that's news, but I mean, what about news that applies to all of us? We're not all in ambulances doing that. I don't trust a lot of college professors if they are at universities where they have to publish or perish, meaning they get there and, generally the universities, for some reason, they tend to have birds of a feather flock together, and they tend to have a certain kind of political bias. And people who go to university come out more liberal after they get their education. But if you want to stay a professor, then you have to publish, meaning you have to come up with statistically significant results and publish it. And if you don't publish it, then you won't get tenured. And once you're tenured, what does that mean? Tenured means that you got a job for life as a professor, and then you're pretty much untouchable. And so they have skin in the game, that if they want to have a job forever, they got to publish. And so they're more motivated to like just get something out there, get publications on the record. And as one of my professors put it, I would rather be proven wrong than ignored, right? So, people who have something to sell, I'm always very wary of them. Psychologists who sell those books, or a lot of therapists who promise all sorts of things that are just too good to be true. If something's too good to be true, it is. And having said all that, don't trust somebody who has something to sell. And I have something to sell. Look at this. This is my Bunny Therapy t-shirt. Who would wear such a fabulous thing? this guy. And you can get this t-shirt. If I get 18 Patreon members, and you can be a Patreon member for $5 a month for general support for the mission to spread psychotherapy across the globe, New York, and in Japan. But right now, our biggest reach is ironically not Japan nor America. It's like in places like India and Australia and Canada and Great Britain and places like that. So we have a global reach, and we're trying to get people to view the channel so they can go to the website. And does the website have something to sell? No, it does not. But if you do want to support, and if you want a really nice t-shirt like this, then you can go to the Patreon. And if you're a $20 subscriber or a $50 subscriber, the $20 level, you can get access to behind the scenes. You get access to material and videos that you wouldn't see. You get an armchair psychologist instruction on how to deal with people, how to do therapy, basically. So if you're an armchair psychologist or a budding psychologist or therapist, then you can do that. And then with that, you get stickers and you get t-shirts and you get the music. And this one's a pink one. It's kind of a half C, like very stylish for women these days. And if I get 18 Patreon supporters, I can open up the merch store and you can just buy the t-shirt. You don't need to do that. And if you reach out to me and contact me through Patreon or the website, and you're willing to do that act, I might send you one for free. Okay, so now the shirt, the bunny therapy shirt. Now, the reason why I chose bunny therapy is because I got the advice from a very well-established YouTuber that you got to come up with a name that is easy to remember, easy to spell. And this is the bunny, because in Japan, they really like cutesy toys. And you go to these capsule machines. They're kind of like gumball machines, kind of like those things. And you can get like these toys. And this is a Rodin's The Thinker, right? Like in Paris, the famous Rodin, except for it's a bunny. And the bunny's thinking, because that's what we do when we're therapists and when we're clients. We think, right? And I put this particular one in a Kyoto style Zen rock garden where they meditate. And meditation is part of mindfulness, where you watch the show in your head, because what your head is telling you is not necessarily the truth. It's a gross approximation, and people can get twisted up and lost in their thoughts and worries and depressions. Did you know that people who are depressed actually perceive the world a little bit more accurately than the rest of us? But the thing that they do distort is how incompetent they are, how futile the future is, and how hostile the world is. But they do see some things very accurately, right? So the bunny doing the mindfulness is watching the show. The bunny's not trying to do anything about it. It's just trying to recognize what's going through that little bunny brain, like your brain. But we're not bunnies, we're primates. And I'm a higher primate, and so are you, which brings you here because you want to do better. And I want you to do better. And I want to be better at helping you be better by driving you to therapy, by driving you to the websites, by making these videos so that you can go through. I think I've got 61 of them now, 61 messages that you can go through at any time, and you can the benefits of the 6.5 years it took me to get a PhD, the years that I spent at NYU, the years I spent as an undergrad with the most decorated psychologist that I think he's the only one that won the APA's Distinguished Teaching, Writing, Research, and Lifetime Achievement Awards. I've worked in hospitals all across New York. I've worked with children. I've worked with people 102 years old. I've worked with borderline personality, narcissistic. I've worked with a lot of criminals. I've worked with, you name it, I've worked with it, except for therapy with children. I've done lots of IQ assessments, and we could talk about IQ and all that too, and what that does and doesn't do, because IQ is predictive of some things. However, it totally misses the boat on certain other things, like, social intelligence, right? Like going into a room, someone might be really book smart, nobody likes them. And if they're so smart, why don't they notice that nobody likes them, right? Or some people are just geniuses with music. They can hear something and play it. It's really wonderful. Um, and some people have both. Recently, I saw, a video called "All My Love," and it has Dick Van Dyke, and the video is Coldplay honoring Dick Van Dyke at his 99th birthday party with his family, and you see just how like nimble he is and how present he is. What a hero of mine, and his attitude of smiling and appreciation of life. And gosh, I hope that we can all be there. That said, there's no guarantee any of us are finishing the day alive. And so we've got to make the most of now. And the mindfulness piece comes in there. So, what am I doing here today, and why should you listen to me? And why should you go to Patreon and support me, and buy T-shirts and that kind of thing? And it's because we know that psychotherapy works. We know that it works, and it's been tested, and it's gone through several iterations where people are testing, does therapy actually do anything, right? Or are they just a bunch of philosophically informed people? Are they basically, just like superstitious people telling you what to do, or they don't know what to do? And there was a ringer where during the 50s where they thought that the therapists had no effect other than other people. But we do know now that it does have an effect. And if you'll indulge me, I'll tell you what those things are, because there's a lot of different kinds of therapy out there, aren't there? Like there's behavioral therapy and solutions based therapists now, and strength based therapy and DBT therapy, and there's mindfulness based therapy, and my favorite, which I think is overly overrated, CBT, which really focuses on your thoughts. And your thoughts, they figure like if you're depressed or something like that, you're distorting stuff, and they'll focus in on your beliefs, and they'll tell you, they'll walk you through it, right? And they'll say, like, they'll look at your automatic thoughts like, oh, it's hopeless, and then they'll say something like, hey, okay, what's hopeless? And they'll be like, why even bother trying? Let's say, for example, it's dating someone. I'm shy. What's the point? I tried it. It didn't work. And they'll be like, well, how often did you try it? Well, I tried it once and I got humiliated. Everybody laughed at me. Okay. Did it hurt you? Well, I got really sad. Yeah, I got really hurt. Well, did it physically hurt you? No, it didn't physically hurt me. Um, how long did that feeling last? Well, it lasted about 20 minutes. Okay. Did you get your needs met? No. Is it possible to get your needs met? I don't think so. Well, have you tried? No. I don't know how to meet anybody. Do you have a phone? Yes. Do you have a church or a social group or a meetup or something like that where you can meet other people? Do you have friends? Yes. Okay. So something's possible to meet people, right? And then so what the idea is, then you undistort their beliefs. And if you undistort their beliefs, then they'll change their emotions. And if they change their emotions, they're more likely to take action, which will change their thinking, and so on and so forth. And it enjoys a lot of research. So there's more kinds of therapy too. Now, which therapy is the best? And we love to test these things, right? There's this one therapy called IPT, Interpersonal Psychotherapy for Depression. And what's really interesting about that one is it enjoys a lot of support from research. But initially, it was created it was initially created as a placebo therapy. They just sort of made it up to compare it to like some of the more established therapy, and it wound up outperforming other therapies. And so the question is, well, what works in therapy? And oh, there's this other thing too called the Vanderbilt studies, where, at Vanderbilt University, they decided to look into these empirically validated treatments. Empirically meaning, it's based upon observation, natural observation, and validated meaning, scientifically scrutinized. And so it's not like just somebody just making stuff up. Like, this is stuff generated by science and applied and tested, and it's shown to work, that kind of thing. And so what they did is at the university is they took a bunch of psychologists who were properly trained, and then they took like other professors, like, or teachers, and like gym teachers or what have you, and then they had them all do a protocol of therapy, and they compared the results, and they found no difference. So what's going on? Oh, furthermore, like with CBT, like the empirically validated treatment that is, everybody calls for CBT, and it usually winds up becoming the exact same thing that other therapies do, mostly because of resistance. Because when people come in to um, fix a problem, they usually have a fire going on, and they're feeling like, in an urgent need to fix their problems. And so they come into the therapist and they're like, I need help, I've got this problem, and I want CBT. So we're like, okay, I'll do CBT with you. And quickly the fire goes out, and then you sort of see where the fire came from. And people don't like looking at that stuff. They like their personalities, and the idea of being discomforted, like, therapy is not a place to go to like feel comfortable any more than the gym is, right? But it does lead to overall comfort if you go to the gym. Like, make sure you know what you're doing. I've hurt myself at the gym because I didn't want to ask, because I felt shy, and so I didn't ask the professionals. Oh, and I wanted to keep my money. And so I wound up hurting my shoulder, and I couldn't wash my hair for a while because my shoulder was all messed up. And then I went to the doctor. But therapy is not a place to go to feel better right off the bat. We expect comfort over time, yes. But to go in there, a lot of times when they don't like it, they start to resist it or avoid it, and they drop out. Or sometimes it's just like, you just brushing up against stuff that they don't want to look at. And I saw a YouTube about this Jungian psychologist. Incidentally, I just wound up screwing up my courage and entering an auction, and I wound up getting a letter from Sigmund Freud about the first psychoanalytic journal. And it mentions Carl Jung by name. Carl Jung is really interesting. And this guy that I was watching was a Jungian therapist, and he had some guy come into his therapy office, and he had been read the Riot Act by his wife, and she said, "You got to go to therapy. I'm out of here," because he was drinking too much. And so he came in, and I'm repeating a story I saw on the Huberman podcast, which is a delightful and informative show. And the guy sees the tissues on the table, and he says, "You've had a woman in here." And he's like, "Yeah." He's like, "Well, I don't need these tissues. I'm not going to need any of that." Right. And then this analyst says to him, like, every man has a lake of tears and a mountain of anger. And people don't like embracing that stuff. But, if you're here, you're interested, you're curious, and we're here to look at that. But what are the things that make the therapy work after all the research and everything like that? And the most interesting thing is that it is not necessarily the ingredients of the therapy. It's not like the cookbook of the therapy that makes it work. No, no. What makes the biggest predictor of outcome is the quality of the relationship you have with the therapist. And you'll see that relationships are important all over the place. But if you can agree on what you're going to do in the therapy, how you're going to do it, and what the goals are. Those are the three factors within the therapeutic relationship that tend to predict the largest outcome. And the other ones include like adherence, meaning um, how much does a therapist stick with their training and their allegiance, and how much do they believe in what they're doing? That also contributes to outcome consistency, and and I would say empathy, but not all people need empathy. Actually, with some people, empathy can work against them, and they need like a different approach. So, and by the way, the quality of the relationship also applies to something like your primary care physician or your mechanic for your car, or with your accountant. The quality of the relationship carries things much further than anything else. And actually, one of my physician in Manhattan in New York City went on vacation, and I'm glad he did. Like, even as a doctor therapist myself, I was pretty impressed at just how focused and involved he was in his work as my doctor, and he really cared about what we were doing, and we had a good relationship. But he went on vacation, he left, and so I'm like, something came up and I needed him. And he was like, go see my colleague who's covering for me. And I went in there, and there's this old man in a white jacket. And recently I'd had a bunch of people pass away, and I was just having some sort of, like, I don't know, heart palpitations or something like that, because even therapists, believe that, like, there's a biology behind everything, and you got to figure it out. And he was a cardiologist. Perfect. And so I sat down, and you know what he did? As a cardiologist, he just sat down and listened to me, and it just came out of me. I told him about one of my classmates in at school he got into Yale, and he just randomly got cancer and died. And then a week later, one of my other classmates was just this fantastic guy, great family guy. What he liked to do was like work with young kids, and he would like teach them soccer and stuff like that. And then if he saw conflict, they'd sit down and they'd have like an impromptu session on the soccer field. And he was like tall and good looking and healthy. And one day he's just walking along, and his heart stopped and he died. And so, like, all this is on my mind, and I'm going in there, and I'm telling this, like, the cardiologist this, and he just listened. He just listened, and it was such an enormous relief. And we weren't talking about my heart, but the quality I could sense in this man, and how much he touched me by just sitting there and saying nothing and listening to me. And when I finished my laundry list, and I became aware, like, holy cow, there's a lot going on in my life. And he looks at me, and he's got this like typical old fashioned doctor, maybe he was Jewish or something, some sort of, kind of Eastern European accent. And he goes, "That is terrible." And I was like, "It is terrible, isn't it?" And then he says something to me that I'm going to say to you, and that I say to my clients too. He looks at me, because then we started talking about my health and my heart, and like my blood pressure and my blood pressure medication, and what can make my life better and longer. because it's his jam. Mine's a little bit different. And he says to me, okay, now everybody listening, whether it's live or on playback, because I'm pretty sure that this is my second attempt at this. I'm still kind of a rookie at all this stuff. But he says to me, you get to choose the future. And I'm like, wow, that's empowering. That gives me hope. Like, he's like, you get to choose what happens next with your health and your life. And I was just like, wow, I'm so glad my regular doctor went on vacation, because, like, I mean, I'm going back to my regular doctor, but this guy's fantastic. And I gave my other doctor the feedback on him, and he goes, yeah, he really listens. He's good. And I'd looked him up, and, in this day and age of the internet, I looked him up, and um, he had all these terrible reviews, and people were like, he's incompetent, he's terrible, and stuff like that. And then I realized, like, this is if you're going online to attack a physician or something like that, I mean, you might have a case, but in this case, this guy, he just looked too legit. And I said, I saw some of your reviews. They're just terrible. And he goes, I don't listen to those comments. And I try to take that in, because, on November 8th, that would be about 40 days ago, something like that. The idea occurred to me that I can reach people and drive them to my website and my therapy and my therapists, because I employ, a bunch of therapists in 2 different countries. And yeah, it's a caring business. It's a business, but our business is helping people live a better life, just like my cardiologist. That's his business, but he's there to, like, help hearts beat better, right? And so I'm here to help lives live better. And in that time, I'm able to I've reached almost in that 40 days. My first interview, or not interview, my first live video went up probably about 6 weeks ago. And in that time, I've been able to get my message out to 250,000 people. And with your help and your viewership, just by showing up, thank you. Thank you very much, because you empower me to try and help other people. And it's a wonderful thing. And just before this video, like, I reflected on that cardiologist saying, I don't listen to the comments, I just do my work and I'm happy with it. But recently I did a video on borderline personality, and I did it because a lot of people find themselves really confused when they're starting to deal with borderline personalities in their life. Because the thing about the borderlines is they tend to run hot and cold. Like, you're either a really great guy, or you are trash that deserves to be thrown out or burnt, and that's it. And it switches back and forth very quickly. And people get very confused with the borderline personality. And so I've done like 60 videos now, and the only 2 negative comments I've gotten were from those videos. And, well, not negative comments, feedback, and I'm open to feedback. But one person said, I can't concentrate on what you're saying because of the music. So right before this video, I'm like, they don't hear my message. Now, that's terrible. I want them to hear my message. So I ran over to my computer, my other computer, and I was able to find the source material, and I was able to edit out the music. So there's no music. It's just me talking. Lucky you, right? You just get to hear me talking. I find myself boring, and I don't like being on camera. But I was able to put it up there, and I responded to them like, there you go. Please watch it. Please try it again. Thank you for the feedback. And I hope you get the message, because the message is what's important. So, whether you're watching this live or maybe you're watching this after the fact online, thank you. You're helping contribute to the greater good of people everywhere. Because, like I said before, we know it works and it's available to you. Now, in Japan, and just like America, about 80 years ago, there's a lot of stigma around therapy. And people think you're crazy for going. And in a place like Japan and some other countries, it looks weak or odd to go to a psychologist, and it's immature to display emotions. And in Japan, they have a couple concepts, and I'll make videos about it, where there's your public persona, and then there's your private persona, your private life. The persona is a mask. It goes back to Carl Jung that I was talking about before. So they have their own version of persona, but it kind of keeps life together. Like, it makes everybody integrated and cohesive. They call it harmony, and I'm just learning about this, so I don't want to speak out of turn until I consult with enough people. But it's a beautiful thing. I moved here from New York City, where pretty much anything goes, to a collectivist society where everybody kind of knows what to expect from everybody else. There's no guns, there's no trash on the street. And interestingly enough, there's no trash cans here. The seats on the train are cloth and soft, and in the wintertime, it's warm. It's not like that hard plastic in New York. And there's a reason why it's plastic in New York. And those trains are made by like Kawasaki, by the way, which is, Kawasaki is not that far from here. Because you never know what's going to happen in there. And there's a lot of homeless. The healthcare here is amazing. So there's a lot of plus sides, but there's a dark side too, because people are lonely. They just opened up a ministry of not justice here, a ministry of loneliness. And they did it in Britain too. And, and it's fascinating, because in the era of connectedness, where there's TikTok and YouTube, and when I lived in the middle of the United States back in the mid 80s, and I flew over and I stayed with a British family and a German family, and I stayed with an Austrian family, and I took pictures with my camera, because that's the only way I'd be able to see these things unless I found a book or a newspaper. And I bought things that I couldn't buy anywhere else. And to make a phone call and talk to these people was just such a precious thing, to be able to pick up the phone and call Germany or call Britain or something like that. It was amazing. And today, it's like the Jetsons. I can pick up my iPad and talk to anybody in the world at any time. I can see live cams of things. Maybe I'll do a live cam from Shibuya. If people don't know, it's kind of like a Times Square here. And it's fun because it's filled with all sorts of characters. It's like where a lot of young people congregate and trying to become musicians, or, they call them idols, singing dance stars. And but today, everybody can communicate, email, call, video from everywhere. And it's hilarious. I was watching who's that guy, John Oliver, who I sat next to on a plane once. That's another story. It's kind of fun. He said, you know what, you want to know how to scare a teenager? Give them a working phone with an incoming call and say, it's for you. And the kids are like, I don't want to do that. So it's kind of the opposite. But the interesting thing is even with all this connectedness, the loneliness goes up. And there's a couple of reasons for that. And one is that humans, we naturally compare ourselves to other people. And there's this relativism where we suffer more when we see what other people are doing and they're doing better than us. And it doesn't matter whether you're a millionaire or you don't make a whole lot of money, but we naturally compare ourselves to others. And, we get this distorted version of other people. And, it's a sad thing, really. And the interesting thing about loneliness, and I'll talk about this again later on, is people who are lonely are not isolated. Like the people who are online and have Instagram, if anything, people on Instagram, maybe I'm just getting a sample, a biased sample, but most people on Instagram are reporting a problem with it, And when, I'm older, right? So when Facebook came out, I was like hot on the scene and I was doing that. And pretty soon I realized that my life, which seemed okay at the time, I mean, I was a struggling student, I didn't have any money. But, I lived in Manhattan. I was young and healthy, and, I had access to some of my idols and world-class art. And on certain days, you can go for free and stuff like that. My life is not so bad. I go on Facebook, and all of a sudden, I don't like my life, but people who are lonely aren't necessarily isolated or lack social skills. They're just dissatisfied with the relationships they have, and it's a problem. So getting back to the Japanese part, um, there's this like public face where everybody's really nice and they like you. And I love that about Japan. Everybody's lovely and nice and polite, even if they don't like you. They'll it's a lovely place to be. But everybody's sort of trained to put on a kind of like a fake face, right? And it's a beautiful fake face. It's nice. It's polite. It's rarely hostile compared to New York. But there's often a comfort in New York when people tell you exactly how they feel in the moment that it's happening. And one thing that I love about New York is like if people call you out on something in a forceful and direct manner, in other parts of the US, that might be considered like picking a fight. But in New York, they will only do it if they have an airtight case where you have violated the social contract and they're being helpful by telling you like, hey, wake up, you're doing something wrong. And you want to be like, oh, don't tell me. And then if you think about it, like, oh, they're right. Yeah. But but with the Japanese people, they're very nice and they're very polite, but they have these private thoughts. And I am told, and I'm not sure about this, if you know about this, comment, somewhere, either on one of my two websites on the Patreon, or I don't know if you can comment on this particular video. Let me see here. This is my second time. I am rather novice at all of this. Interact. Okay, great. So I can see this. I now, after 6 weeks, have reached 250,000 people. And I can put like a little thing in there. Oh, look at that. That's cool. But the dark side is that when people freak out in Japan, it comes out in strange ways, like random acts of terror or violence or just odd stuff. And one of the biggest problems here is they're called chikan. And chikan are like these guys on the subway because the girls here, they go to school are in these like little outfits and stuff like that. And Japan does not dress trashy. They tend to dress pretty conservatively, not too flashy, and but not, sloppy. And so they're usually pretty well put together. And in these trains, people can get shoved in there, and it's pretty tight quarters. And it's a whole thing here where these guys will touch inappropriately women and girls and stuff. And they have, I think it was yesterday, I was in a women's only car. They have cars just for women so that they can be together with other people that without having to be aware of who's around them. And I'm gonna guess that the reason why that's pronounced in Japan is because people are very lonely. And you know even hermits, like, who live in, traditionally, like, in isolated areas, and live a hermit monk life. They, even if they're alone, they tend to have regular visitors. We need a human connection. And so part of my mission is to come to Japan and try and instill a little bit of what we have in New York in a socially accepted way, in a culturally respectable way. Because, like, in New York, people go to therapy all the time. In America, we see it in the TV shows and the movies. It's well regarded and respectful. In America, I have a lot of power, I have a lot of responsibility, and a lot of liability. So it's not like, it's not like a cakewalk or anything like that. But in Japan, it's kind of like kind of ignored. And then to go see a therapist. Oh, this was really interesting. In New York, my I had two office mates on my floor, and one was right next to me, and one was down the hall. And sometimes people would fly into from Japan to talk to him. He's Japanese, by the way. He a well trained psychologist, Japanese psychologist, and people would fly in from Japan and see him intensively for 2 weeks and fly back because they don't want anybody to know. And because there were two Japanese therapists on the same floor, their clients hated the fact that they could run into each other. And eventually one switched floors because the clients just didn't want to see each other in the lobby. And that's in New York. Whereas in Americans, like, especially New Yorkers, they go to therapy regularly, like it's the gym. Um, so how do we interface with this society, and how do we create understand culturally how to interface with them where they can keep their social respect and do the thing that they've been sort of trained not to do, which is to express themselves openly and honestly. And in therapy, um, we kind of hope for disagreements. And here it's a little less respectable to, like, like, your teacher's your sensei, to, like, say, like, you know what, you got it all wrong. You got me wrong. That's probably not something you get so much in America. You kind of, like, hope for it, like, oh, great, you disagree with me. I want to hear about that, because that's a chance for the therapy to advance. That's a chance to hear, like, maybe I made a mistake, and maybe it's important for that person to see that somebody can acknowledge a mistake and fix it and then address it. Or maybe they're bringing in, like, some sort of, like, problem that they're having interacting with other people, where they're getting inappropriate with people, or distorted, or maybe they're perceiving things that aren't there. And it's a chance then for us to interact with all of that. I mean, so we hope for that in America, but here probably not as much. And this is where you can come in. So whether you're watching this live or in a replay, I hope you look at the videos, and I hope you think about the videos, and I hope you discuss the videos. And I hope you take the chance to go to the websites and see what's available, because we also train interns in New York, and they're very affordable. That's a rare opportunity to get affordable therapy in New York, and it's an opportunity for me to learn from you, like what your needs are, what can I do to help, and especially if you understand Japan or are Japanese or you're in Japan, um, how we can help advance the cause. And if you're in India watching this, good grief, there's so many Indians watching this channel. Thank you, India. And India is not a monolithic place. India has so many different cultures and so many different languages and so many different cuisines and so many different religions. Did you know that the Buddha came from India? And yeah, people think it's like some sort of East Asian thing. It's not. And the Chinese, well, a lot of the stories and traditions and Buddhist ways made their way from India. And the Indians also have other religions too, like ones that are not so much well understood, like Jain. Uh, Mahatma Gandhi borrowed heavily from the Jains, who believed in nonviolence. And they have Muslims, they have lots of Muslims, and they have different kinds of um, I don't want to blow it right now, but up in the Punjabi area, there's this fantastic religious tradition, and they produce these wonderful warriors. It's on the tip of my tongue. Please don't judge me for not being able. I'm terrible with names, by the way. Gosh, I even hung out at their temple in Orange County, and they make delicious food. They're very nice, but they're big guys, and they have these lion warriors. The British would hire these lion warriors, and it's driving me nuts. What's the major religions in India, aside from obviously Hindu, right? Major religions in India. I'm going to go ahead and Google it. Sikhism. Thank you. Yeah, so Hinduism, Islam, Christianity, Sikhism, Buddhism, Jainism, Animism, Adivasi, and so thank you, India, and all of the rich cultures. Did you know that also India had as a cradle of their own civilization? What a capable people. And they have, like, there's this one group of people that it's in charge of burning bodies. It's part of their kind of thing, and they have fires that are older than my entire country. That's amazing. So thank you, India. And if the Indians are watching, please use Google Translate. I created a song in Hindi. I employ a Hindi therapist, but she's a little bit shy about going online and talking. I am too. I don't like looking at myself, and never have, never will. But if they can advise the status of therapy in India, I would love to hear that. I would love to hear your feedback. But like, again, the goal here is to interact with my audience, to learn from them, and to offer them hope and a path to better understand themselves. Because being human means that life is not fair, and there's no reason why it should be fair. And you're banging your head against the wall if you want it to be fair. So there's an unconditional acceptance of the world and what it offers us. And then there's also, and I'm borrowing from a cognitive tradition right now called rational emotive behavioral therapy. And there's unconditional acceptance of the other. Now, that doesn't mean we approve of the world being unfair. It doesn't mean we approve of all the things that other people do that we find noxious. But humans are flawed. They're higher primates. I'm a higher primate, and so are you. But there's no reason why they should not have flaws. And then this is a good one. There's the unconditional acceptance of the self. And you, being the higher primate you are, you're going to have flaws. Goodness knows I do. Now, I could sit there and beat myself up about my past and the things that I did that were wrong, either to me, to others, or to society, or to the law, or whatever measuring stick you want to use for right and wrong in the eyes of God, or whatever it is. I've made mistakes, and you've made mistakes, and there's no reason why we should not make mistakes, and there's no way to avoid making mistakes in the future. And as a corollary, you always hurt the one you love, and you're going to have conflicts with the ones that you love, and you're going to have disagreements and anger and resentments towards the one you love. Now, that doesn't mean it has to be a fight. Like sometimes I talk to people like in couples or individually, and I'm like, well, have you told them how you feel about this? And they're like, I don't want to fight. And I'm like, well, why does it have to be a fight? Is there like a way to say this in a way that somebody can hear? Like you'll see one of my shorts, I'm doing this because working in this really intense unit, I saw a top sergeant, a former top sergeant, talking to one of the veterans in the unit we were at, and he's kind of like a natural leader because of his rank and his position and his wisdom and all that stuff. People listen to him. And especially when they would come into the unit, our unit was tough as nails. Like they're used to pushing people around. Wasn't going to happen in our unit. We are really strict. There's a curfew, there's rules, and there's all sorts of things. And they don't like it because they were homeless and living the streets on the life, and they were calling the shots. And they come in and then they just start acting up, and there's no reason why they shouldn't act up. And much like the people commenting on the cardiologist that I mentioned before, these are people with problems and they're not happy, and it makes sense that they're going to make derogatory comments online, because if someone's unhappy, they do that. And if like with the remoteness of going online and the virtual anonymity of it, you could say anything about anybody, which is probably why the cardiologist just didn't really read the comments and just did his job. But like there's no reason why we shouldn't have problems, and we are going to hurt the ones we love, and we don't have to fight. But there is room for disagreement, and there is room for heated interactions, but there's no reason to take it too far. And learning how to recognize when to take a break and when time to speak up is something that you can negotiate with your partner and with your trusted advisors in school or church or in your community or with your family, or with somebody who doesn't have any skin in the game, a therapist. And sometimes it's really hard as a therapist to say something that somebody really needs to hear. But it's all about timing and when to say it, because like the top sergeant said, he would confront some of these people, and then they'd get all reactive, and he's like, "Look, you're like this right now." He's like, "I need you like this," and he shows his hands dropping. And I've adopted that, and I added a third part because of my job. I'm like, "You're like this. I need you like this, and I'd like you to be like this," you know, because there's times, and timing's everything, but it's also how you say it. I call it the 3 T's. There's the truth, there's timing, and there's tact, because you can tell people the truth all the time, and if they're not going to hear it, or if the way you say it is in a way that they're not receptive to, they're not going to get the message. So in that spirit, I hope, and please give me feedback, like that person who commented on the borderline video said, I can't hear you because of the message. All right, I got you. I don't want you to be like this. And I don't want you to be like, I give up. I'm not going to listen to this video. I want them to be like this. I want them to listen to the message. So if you can help me improve that message, if you can help me help create a world where people don't have to be alone, where people can feel that they have hope and that they have things that they want to do, that there's a place for that where they can go. And even if it's uncomfortable, a place where they can hear what they need to hear or get the support that they need to get. Some people don't need to hear the things they don't want to hear, especially if they're depressed. That's not the time to jump up and down and tell them like what they need to do and, give them tough love. Those people just need plain old kindness. They need they're kind of like imagine taking in a stray, I don't know, cat or dog, and it needs it. What it needs is to be accepted and nurtured and brought in and rehabilitated and cared for and given that little breath time to catch their breath and recalibrate. And then it's time to learn the new tricks, and then it's time to like see what this wonderful little life can do. But at first, sometimes you just need to be kind and nurture them and listen. And much like that cardiologist came in, and he could have told me like, "Oh, you're eating this and you're doing that, and you're not doing enough of this, and you're overweight, and you need to grow a thicker skin and all that stuff." No, he just listened to me, and it meant so much that he could look at me and just say, "That's terrible," and meet me where I was at that moment. And I would like to carry that wisdom forward and share it with you. So I hope that I'm correct in this new endeavor, because like I say, it's only been about 6 weeks, and today is my first live stream. So this is all new for me. I'm putting myself out there. I don't like it, but I think it'll do me better. I think it'll do others better. I think it will help you do better. And, like I'm not going to and say that I welcome the feedback, because, it helps improve my algorithm, which makes me more prominent, which makes me get my message out there more. But mostly, I want to do better, and I want to hear what you want to talk about. And if you go to Patreon, you can comment. If you go to the website, you can comment. All of that's free. If you become, if you go on to the contact page of Therapist for Me, the number 4 me, .jp, and go to it goes directly to me, and then I can delegate whatever resources we have to help you and give you a free 15-minute consultation to make sure we know what we can do to help. And if we can't help you, we'll help you find someone that can. Or you can or get therapy. And if you want, you can leave comments. And if you want to go to the Patreon for $5, you can be a supporting member and get access to some of the songs. I created some songs initially because I wanted to get the message out there in other languages, but I couldn't. I don't know. I mean, I learned how to do YouTube. I learned how to do the editing software. I learned how to do the designing software. I figured all that out, and I got 250,000 views in 6 weeks, right? But right now, the idea of learning voice to text in another language sounds really hard. So I just wrote out the message I had in lyrical form, set it to music, put it up on the thing, and now people can hear the message in Hindi, and people can hear it in Japanese, and they can hear it in English. And there's different versions. There's 4 versions for each song. And some of them are reserved for the $5 members. And if you become a $20 member, you can get stickers and T-shirts. And go to the website and like why Therapy Bunny, why I made it, what this logo means. It's quite multi-layered. It looks silly, like this guy's got like a screw loose. He's like talking about bunnies and stuff like that. Are you a man or what? I assure you, there's a lot of thought and meaning that went into this thing. And if you're a $20 member, you get the stickers and you get access to the songs and you get access to videos. You get the T-shirts sent to you, and they're pretty cool. I made them myself. I learned how to make a T-shirt too. See how adaptive this whole thing is? I'm really prolific. I put up a lot of videos, so it's not like you're just going to be dumping money nowhere. I'm on a mission. I've established the 2 companies. I've established the YouTube channel. I established the websites. I'm working on it, and I'd like your assistance. Now, for $50, you can get all of that other stuff, the behind the scenes, I forgot to mention on the $20 level, you can get information on how a therapist works and how they frame, like, how do you work with a borderline? How do you work with a narcissist? How do you work with a psychopath? What is the best way to communicate? How do you do couples? Couples is rough, let me tell you. Even some of the best therapists I've known say the only time I wish somebody else was in the room was when I'm doing couples treatment, because the temperature is so high. It's temperature so high when you're doing couples therapy. These the people, like I said, you always hurt the one you love, right? Well, these people are hurt, and they've got skin in the game, and so. For the $50, you get all of that, and you get a chance to interact with me and ask me a question or consult with me on some issue of some importance. And you can get that personal attention in addition to everything else. So I'm still getting the hang of this. And I think I'm going to come back in maybe about 8 hours. And do another one, because I'm just getting the hang of this. In the meantime, you can see the first one where I made my mistake and I showed up 3 hours early. Now I showed up on time, and I'm going to show up a third time just to sort of try and learn from my mistakes and see what's going on here. And I hope that it records and you're able to catch all this, and you get to rewind and go through all of my stories as quickly as you can. I think you have a setting where you can put it on like fast mode and listen to it at double speed. So I don't waste your time. So I thank you for your time and attention, and I welcome your feedback, and thank you very much.